Your last name, how do you pronounce it?
Vian.
Vian. Oh, I was way
Vian.
off.
Yeah, no, nobody guesses it right. Everybody says Vian,
Vian. Yeah,
basically.
that's what you go to first. But I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like he's in Europe, so maybe it's Vian. I was gonna go
Well, you know
there.
what? I think it used to be, I think it's French Italian. So it used to be Vian. And then my great grandfather probably changed it to make it sound more English. So
Okay.
now we go by Vian, which, yeah, no, it's nobody's first guess. So don't worry about it.
Oh, are you originally French?
My on my dad's side, if you go back far enough, we become French. Yeah. So
Okay.
I think I'm like one quarter French technically.
All right. Originally French. I
So,
don't know what that even means. You're either French
oh
or you're
yeah.
not. Hello everyone. This is Under the Mayo. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Gaming Enthusiasm. I'm joined by our guest today, the director of Crow Country, Adam Vian. How you doing, Adam?
Hey, hey, thanks for having me.
I'm happy to have you.
Doing great.
I've wanted to talk to you, God, since the game came out. It's such an interesting title. I really wanted to talk to who's behind it. But your brother is also with you on this, right?
Yeah, so
Are you guys both
SFB Games, which is our
directors?
so I was the creative director on Crow Country, and Tom. So normally Tom has the title of tech director, which basically means he's a programmer and every other bit of tech and admin.
Okay.
Crow Country was unusual, and I programmed it myself using visual scripting. And then Tom came along and did cleanup, optimization, localization, publishing, backend, data, all the crazy stuff I can't do.
Okay.
So that was how it was. It was an unusual split in that I sort of made the game, quote unquote, and then
When
Tom came along and sort of said, "Okay, let's get this cleaned up, ready for release."
Wow. Okay. So normally he would be on that side of things.
Yeah, normally we make stuff from together from scratch, but I made Crow Country kind of quietly by myself for a while, so it was an unusual SFP Games process.
How many titles do you have so far? You guys working together?
We I've been making games since I was that's 14, and I'm 36 now. So if you go on sfbgames.com and scroll down, we've made over 100 games because we used to do flash games, and they would take at the least they would take 2 days to make.
Sure.
We used to have a deal with Armor Games where we'd make 2 games a month,
Huh.
one small one and one big one, and that is ridiculous to me now. The idea of finishing 2 things in a month, 2 games in a year would be ridiculous, right? So anyway, so we've made lots and lots and lots of small games, and then in the last 10 years we've switched to mobile and console and stuff, and these ones take a bit longer. So we've made Haunt the House, we've made 3 Detective Grimoire games, Snipper Clips, Crow Country. So there's like 5 games that are like real video games, you could say, and then
Sure.
a bunch of smaller stuff from back in the day.
And is Crow Country would you say it's the biggest project you've had so far, or do you have other games of a similar
Um,
scale?
it's about the same as so Tangle Tower, which is our detective adventure game, and then Snipper Clips is the Nintendo puzzle game that we made.
Mm.
Those were both kind of a similar scope in that they took a couple of years to make. Crow Country took me longer because I made it by myself, so it took 3 years, maybe 4 years.
Jeez,
Um,
4 years on Crow
and
Country. That's
Well, it
that.
wasn't full time. I was splitting my work between other projects
Okay.
because for a long time it was my hobby project. But yeah, Crow Country has been our biggest release in terms of numbers and sales and stuff. So
Yeah,
like it kind of feels like our biggest game ever in
I
a way,
wanted
which
to
is
ask you about
amazing.
that. How are you feeling after the success of it? I mean, it was like I've never seen a reaction. Well, I mean, maybe Signalis is comparable of just like open arms,
Yeah,
embracing of just everybody. And so, I mean, I don't know what a really successful sales numbers are for your team and for your
sure.
budgets, but I mean, how is it going so far, and how have things been since?
It's going great. Like the sales are really good. They're good on Steam and they're good on PS5, and slightly less good on Xbox. So that's where we're at.
Where
Not bad on Xbox, but yeah,
where do you have
same.
a higher community? Is it Steam or is it PlayStation?
I mean, Steam is always the bigger place for an indie game.
Yeah,
It's just the biggest platform in the world for this kind of thing. It's the most important one to get right. It tends to be if you nail Steam, and then you can kind of branch out to everything else. But there's definitely a strong PlayStation identity to Crow Country, so we knew we had to hit PS5. And many people would have liked us to hit PS4, which we haven't done yet.
Oh yeah, you should. You should.
I know we should. But yeah, no. So it's done really well on PS5. Like the wishlist numbers were good, and the sales numbers were good. So it's been great. Really good sales, like straight away, and then continuing. It has like word of mouth momentum, which is the best possible thing you could ask for as an indie developer. Like it doesn't feel like it's disappeared yet, which is a massive win for me because it released in May. So
Yeah.
you know.
What was I just gonna ask? You said something about you said that it has a strong PlayStation identity. Are you referring to the PlayStation 1 kind of Final Fantasy graphical style, or
yeah? I mean, just the fact that it leans on Resident Evil and Silent Hill, which are both to me PlayStation games.
Yeah.
Even though they're not first party, they are PlayStation games. And when I made Crow Country, I was using the PlayStation button icons for the UI from day one because to me that was what it was.
Okay.
So I wanted to sell it on PlayStation, and then it was like obviously you have to do PC as well, but it was a game to be played with a controller, so totally. PlayStation's a good place for it.
Just speaking of controls, one of my questions here is how did you decide on the clunky aiming system? How did you resist the urge to be able to like lock on and walk back and stuff like that?
Okay.
How did you get there, and how did you like have the balls to commit?
I'm glad that you actually followed that up with an example of something concrete that Crow Country doesn't do, which you said lock on and walk backwards. Okay,
yeah.
So that's an example.
Or even just walking back, or even just being able to move.
Yeah, sure.
Not
okay,
just
so when you
on.
say clunky, you're kind of referring to like when you pull out the gun, you're stationary, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was always the way. I guess it's just Resident Evil, Silent Hill. The playbook I was following was you don't walk with your gun out because the decision to pull out your gun is the decision to stop moving and do your best to make a shot.
Well, not in Silent Hill.
No, is that not true in Silent Hill?
No,
even the first one.
Even the first one, you can walk. That's a Resident Evil thing.
I haven't played Silent Hill 1 in a while. That's honestly that I didn't remember that, but okay, fair enough. So I guess I just think I have played a lot of classic Resi. I guess that was what got loaded into my brain as the standard default. But yeah, no, I never thought about moving while aiming. It was so much of Crow Country is clunky and simple because that was the best I could do, and it was conveniently overlapping with what the genre, like the graphics are low poly and the controls are clunky, and it's like, yeah, but that's also the only thing I could manage because this is my first 3D action game, and my first game where you shoot things. Like I've never made that before.
That's
so
interesting.
I didn't know what I was doing.
So controls and even the graphical style weren't so much of a conscious decision, more of you working within your limitations and getting creative with it.
Yeah, it was definitely both. It was definitely I was aware that this is what I wanted for this genre, but at the same time there was never I couldn't even have made a more complex game if I'd wanted to, basically.
Okay.
So it was just convenient. I think that's probably why I landed on this genre more than, say, I don't know, a platformer or something, which would have required a bit more smooth physics, animation type stuff. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you don't really get like clunky platformers in the same way. It's like I probably wouldn't have made a game like that. I've made a game that I could make, which is a game where you walk around and stop and shoot and then walk around some more. But like, it originally only had tank controls, even on the analog stick. And then we showed it to the very first people we showed it to. I won't name who they are, but it's an indie publisher that we didn't go with. But they basically didn't like it because of the controls. They sent it back and said, yeah, we kind of hated the controls. And at this point it was tank only. And I guess they were all playing, they just played it with tank because that's all you could. But I also was aware that tank controls feel bad on an analog stick, in my opinion. And they feel better on a D-pad.
Yes.
But if you only have, tank controls and they're on the D-pad and the analog stick, most people in the modern day will default to using the analog stick regardless.
Yeah.
So they'll pick the worst version of the two and just use it and have a bad time. And so that's what helped me make my decision to, okay, let's get rid of the analog stick tank and just put put modern controls on the stick. So whichever one people use, you get the sort of appropriate feeling controls for that.
Sure. Yeah, I always appreciate when modern survival horror games include a tank control option, but I rarely find myself using it because for me, tank controls goes hand in hand with certain camera styles. And
I've heard that as well.
What's great about tank controls in Resident Evil is that you can hold up and your character is walking towards the camera, and then the camera suddenly shifts to another perspective. And if you just keep holding up, your character keeps going the way you want them to. You don't have to think about it. But in a game like Crow Country, where the camera is constantly adjusting to where you're aiming, then it doesn't feel necessary, or like Signalis, where the entire thing is like top-down, semi-isometric. Like, cool. It's great that tank controls are there, but I don't use them. It is only, but Elisa, right? Elisa is all fixed camera, painted backgrounds. I'm tank controls all day on that game.
Yeah, no, that is true. That is the difference, I think. So I just went with Tank Original and Crow Country, just again by default. And then I'm really glad I added Modern because I use them now too.
Yeah.
If I go back to Tank, I'm like, oh yeah, one of the reasons, and you know about this, one of the reasons the game was a bit easy on day one was because I designed it with Tank. And then I added Modern. And suddenly you could whip around the enemies like it was nothing. When you couldn't do that.
Like Resident Evil HD remaster, where
they added modern controls, right?
And it breaks the entire game. It breaks the entire game.
Yeah. There we go. Lesson learned.
Yeah. So you got to balance it you got to pick a control scheme and balance for it.
Yeah, for sure.
Whether it's unfortunate or not, you got to balance for modern controls because that's how you got to get new audiences into the game. And then tank controls can be the extra suffering if you want to go that way, I guess.
I think so too. So whenever I make a horror game in the future, it'll be balanced around the version of the controls people are actually using rather than
Sure. You just mentioned the difficulty. Is that why there was no hard mode planned, ready for launch, or did you not even plan it? I'd love to talk about
basically, that. I was kind of in the back of my mind, I had the mindset of, there's something about adding multiple difficulty settings that's kind of cowardly. Like, I always feel like it's quite nice if the game just says, here I am, this is the design of the game, and you play me and you get the experience the developer intended. And so I was hesitant to break it up into multiple difficulty settings at first. I just didn't really want to do that. I thought survival horror mode would be all that was needed, and then exploration mode wasn't even a difficulty mode. It was literally just like there's no combat. Like it doesn't even fit on the scale. It's like a separate thing. So for me, it was just there's one mode, and it's not normal mode or hard mode. It's just Crow Country mode. And I have to be honest, the reason it's easy is because the people that tested it just weren't hardcore experienced horror survival people. And so the feedback I was getting was from the more kind of, that end of the spectrum. So I tweaked it for those people.
Okay.
And I am actually glad this happened because, yes, we had to wait 2 weeks for hard mode for you and everyone else that wanted it. But having a slightly easy normal mode kind of helped us because it made the game this like really accessible jumping on point, and also younger people and older people that were less experienced with the genre but liked the idea of it. They were able to play Crow Country and they didn't have a bad time. So it's like, yes, it was too easy for some people, but I think actually it was a good thing overall.
Okay.
It was a slightly easier game, but obviously having a hard mode, we should have had it, and I, as soon as I realized that, I made it as quick as I could. Now it's in there.
Even just as an unlockable mode, right? Like maybe you don't even have it.
You're right. That would have been perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, you get a veteran difficulty or something.
Yeah, so a week went by after release, and it was, people love the game, but the one consistent thing we're getting is that some people say it's too easy, and so after 1 week after release, I was like, I've got to do something about this. So I spent the next week making hard mode, 7 days, like pretty much nonstop working on it. And then it came out after that. So it came out 2 weeks after release. And the number one thing I did was I took all the values for the enemy AI, all the values. I'm talking awareness, radius, I'm talking reaction time, animation, cooldown time, everything. And I like tripled it, or made it shorter, whatever it needed to be harder. So I just jacked up those numbers way higher, because some people were rightly so saying the enemies don't really react or attack you.
Sure.
They just kind of stand there. And I just became aware that was kind of true, and it was a bit of a shame. So that was the first thing I did.
And you did a lot more.
I did a lot more because I had fun with making it. Like, I didn't want it to feel boring. I wanted it to be like, I really wanted it to be an excuse to play the game again if you had already played it. I know it was only 2 weeks in, but I just thought it'd be great to tell people, hey, there's this new mode and you can enjoy the game all over again and find little moments of, like, having the fortune teller be vandalized.
Beautiful.
And you can't use it, and the vending machine being out of order. It's just like little jokes that actually, it's funny to discover those moments. So I had fun with it. I had a great time with it. And then obviously it's very easy just to make less ammo pickups, and you take slightly more damage, and that stuff's the easy stuff.
Yeah.
But here's a secret about Crow Country. A couple of weeks after hard mode came out, I was like, okay, hard mode is perfect. It's exactly what I wanted it to be. And honestly, I'd seen your video, and that helped me realize that, okay, I've got this right.
Oh, great. And thank you for staying in contact with me during that process, because it was really important.
Oh no, it was fascinating.
Really important to me to get the details that weren't like exactly public. I really wanted to let people know what was going on, so thank you for that.
Yeah, no, you represented the audience member that I was trying to placate.
That's nice to hear.
And you're not the only one. There's plenty of people on Steam and stuff that were saying similar thing. Anyway, so a couple of weeks after that, maybe a week after, I don't know, I can't remember that. I basically still felt like survival horror mode as it was, which was completely untouched. I still felt like the enemies didn't react to you at all, and they just stood there, especially now in the face of hard mode, which is like, oh, look, the enemies are actually a threat now. Isn't this nice? And I was like, yeah, it feels bad now to play survival horror mode and have the enemies just be like completely blank-faced, like waiting ages to attack you. So what I did, and this is now the state of the game, and I think I've got it right, and I'm really, really happy with it now. I put survival horror mode, all the enemies now, all their numbers are halfway between what they used to be and what hard mode is. Every single one. So now survival horror mode isn't too easy. It's actually exactly correct. And people have stopped, generally speaking, saying Crow Country is great, but the enemies don't move, don't react, or it's too easy.
Nice.
So I've kind of just erased that from history.
Okay.
And now it's running as intended.
Yeah, that's fucking great, man. Because I think I said in my first review of it, when I was like, you guys nailed it, this, and then I had the whole section about the difficulty, and it's that when people make survival horror games now, they have to realize that we've been here for 25 years. And we know how these games are played at this point, and so we know what we're looking for. And a lot of us want that pressure, right? We want to feel like, oh man, I just made a bad decision, and the next 10 minutes are gonna be rough. Like, a lot of us really learned that when we were kids, when we made a bad call in Resident Evil 1. And
I always say one of my favorite things about the genre is that you can, so you have to plan ahead, and you can make mistakes, and then you have to suffer the consequences of those mistakes. Yeah, which is not true for a lot of game genres. It just isn't. So yeah, I think Crow Country now is that, just about where it wasn't originally. Yeah,
no, it's great. It just raises it up a little more in an area that needed to be raised up, because everything else is just so stellar. I mean, you guys are a lot more of a puzzle-based, figure out the map sort of game, which is what is so cool about the indie scene of survival horror right now, is that there's all these stellar survival horror games coming out, but they all lean into an aspect of survival horror in a different way than others. Right? One will be a lot more about resource management, but another will be a lot more about puzzles. And then
it's interesting seeing like Conscript, for instance, which is a game where you walk down a lot of hallways and get lost.
Yes.
And Crow Country has nothing like that. The areas in Crow Country are really kind of short and simple, and there's no endless labyrinth type level design.
Yeah.
So that's just, two games on opposite ends of the spectrum in that regard.
Totally.
That makes them quite different experiences, among many other things, of course.
And then we have Hollow Body coming out.
Yeah, that's this week, right?
Yes, that is this week. This interview will be up maybe the day before or the day after. I don't know.
Nathan's Twitter says September the 12th, just
Yeah.
as a date. So that's as time of recording, that's very soon. Nathan's a friend of mine. I know him from in real life because we're both from the UK, and he's also he comes from adventure games, kind of like I do. So we both have a weird thing of we've made adventure games, we've made horror games. Just a weird coincidence. But yeah, Hollow Body looks great. I really, really hope it does well for him because it looks awesome. I feel like he's nailed the PS2 side of things, which obviously I didn't go near. So I think that's looking great. I look forward to it.
Would you like to step up your graphics game in the next 3D title, or are you comfortable with the sort of PS1 style?
No, I wouldn't go near PS2. And actually, interestingly, Nathan from Hollow Body has said he regrets going so HD detailed because it's such a pain in the ass to make.
Really?
All those assets, all those textures, all that lighting. It's a nightmare. And like Silent Hill 2 and 3 looking as good as they do is great, but it's actually not super feasible for the average dev. It's weird because you've got PS2 games and then you've got Silent Hill 2 and 3, which look better than your average PS2 game, so it's kind of a weird metric.
Like Silent Hill 3, with just like some tweaks, could be like a PS3 title. It's
basically,
good.
It looks better than some PS3 games, and to this day, Silent Hill 2 and 3 are two of the best looking games of all time, in my opinion. So no, I wouldn't go near it. I would stick in my lane with the PS1 bubble. I think there's other things I can do within that space that are different, but yeah, I really like the kind of low poly, chunky world, and doing texturing is actually the sort of hardest part. Modeling's easy and quick, and texturing is a pain and it's tedious. Anyway.
And if you are staying in that low poly style, does that also mean that you would be staying in the sort of like childish friendly look, or are you just talking about the low poly, and would you go in a different art style?
That's a really good question because I'm dealing with that right now because I am working on another horror game. It's totally early days experimentation type stuff at the moment, and it's not Crow Country 2, it's something different. But one of the questions I have is what on earth are the people going to look like? Because in Crow Country the characters are... So when I started Crow Country, I didn't have any 3D modeling tools. I just had primitives. And if you don't know what primitives are, they're like spheres and cylinders and cubes and half spheres and half cylinders and pyramids. And that was it. And so the reason Mara looks like she does is because I'd had no modeling tools. So I made her out of blocks. And so her dress is a half sphere because that's all I had. And her legs are capsules, which is the sort of pill shape, because that's all I had. But I liked the way it looked. I wasn't upset with that. I liked the way it looks. It looks nice, and it does evoke Final Fantasy 7, but it's just what I had to hand. But now that I have some 3D modeling experience, and this happened in Crow Country, as I went further into the project, I became able to model kind of anything I wanted. I have the option to make kind of an art style for the human characters that isn't just those sort of blocks, those simple like basic shapes. And so that's actually quite a daunting task because I feel like that's the kind of number one defining thing about your game is what do the people look like and why. So I'm looking for something that is a bit more unique and probably less childlike. Honestly, I think it will be less childlike. I think the character will be older. Mara's quite young and sort of like chubby and rounded, so that just worked. But for a lot of characters, it would be a weakness to be so kind of Playmobil Lego type thing.
The chubby joke on the boat is hilarious, by the way.
Oh, thank you. That's one of my favorite lines in the whole game, where she says, "You better sit in the
It's,
middle for balance," right?
and she said, "What?" God, that is so good.
I love that. It's funny because Mara like agrees with her, because Mara's like, if you try and sit on either side, regardless of whether or not you've spoken to Julie, she says, "I better sit in the middle."
Yeah, so it's just like a
It's like
self-conscious.
we all know it's true, but
That's,
Mara is supposed to be slightly chubby, by the way.
yeah.
Like occasionally I get fan art and she'll be like super slender, and I'm like, that's great, but it's not canon,
Yeah,
Anyway.
it's funny. Um, uh, Something about the childlike art style. It does give it the game like its own really unique identity. Like, it just doesn't look like anything else out there.
Sure.
But one thing that also really makes the game special is how you seamlessly combine it with the horrific. I mean, there's a like when you're walking through like the back, like the backstage areas where it's all like wooden walls. I don't know what you call those areas, but like there's like a blood splatter on the wall, and it's just like something like that stands out so much, but it works so well. And there's the moment, because you could mistake this game as being like made for little kids if you just like, oh, look at the box art, but then you walk into the security room, and like the guy's head's blown off. His brains are just splattered.
Full on suicide.
It's a fucking suicide. And you walk in and you're playing, this girl, and this cute dress, and everything's all cutesy, and his brains are all over the floor, and it's just so striking. That image is something that is just going to stay with me forever, and that doesn't happen all the time. There's something really striking about the contrast there that I think you really found something wonderful.
So this is a really interesting topic. I think about this a lot, but so like playing Final Fantasy VII as a kid, I never had any problem with the little chunky character models. I really liked them. I thought they were very appealing and relatable and charming and funny and sweet and sad, and all the drama in that game came across perfectly for me. I never felt like there was a barrier, and as a contrast to nowadays, seeing like FF7 remake stuff, I'm like, this is worse. I don't like this. So it's not. I actually think that simple blocky characters is not just that they don't necessarily harm drama and relatability and charm and appeal. They boost it, because it's a layer of abstraction that gets rid of the awkwardness of trying to look like real life. It's the same reason that an emoji of a smiley face is more appealing and heartwarming than a photograph of a smiling man. It's like, if it's it's behind a layer of abstraction and you can attach yourself to it.
Did you practice that line? Did you practice that line? Have you said that before? Because that's too good.
I think I've said that in an interview once. I'm trying to make the exact same point. It's true though.
It really is.
Put it behind abstraction. It's better you feel it more strongly, because that's why PS3 games and onwards are worse, because they just look like people and they're all in the uncanny valley, and it sucks. So yeah, like the simple characters, and then all you have to do is not be ashamed of your game. You just have to be sincere with the writing and the drama and everything. So you have your little blocky characters, and then you just play it completely straight, where you treat them like people, and you give them real lines of dialogue, and and then suddenly they're real, and that's all that matters. So yeah.
Oh, that's beautifully stated. No, I agree that like the image of in Silent Hill 1, when Lisa is walking towards you, when her polygon model is covered in blood and she's crying, right? Like it's just a flat model, right? Her face is not moving, but
it's magical.
She's just stumbling towards you. It's so. Like, striking.
Famously, the faces in Metal Gear Solid 1 are super duper blurry. The eyes, in particular, are super blurry.
Yeah.
Because they said, "Oh, if we put detailed eyes, they'll be wrong and they won't match the drama sometimes, and it will ruin it. So you just take them away, and your imagination fills it in and does a better job than anything else any real graphics could do." So yeah, and also like there's something about the vibe of a PS1 this is another thought that I have. Like, I feel like, okay, so 2D games like SNES games or a Mega Drive game or something like that, they exist on a screen, like on a flat screen, and then games PS3 onwards exist in like an attempted version of the real world. Whereas PlayStation 1 games, to me, they exist in this third space that's not either of those two things. Like they don't they feel like they exist. It's completely magical and unique. To me, it's like halfway between playing with toys and a dream. That's where I place it. And that's why those games are so compelling, and they attach to your emotional side because they just feel, I don't know, magical and special. So yeah,
Yeah,
this is something I think about a lot, obviously.
yeah. Uh, where did um, where did the idea of the story come from? I'm curious if there's an
Mm.
amusement park from your childhood or that was influential on you or something.
Well, I grew up in southeast England, so we would go to Disneyland Paris every few years because it was not that far away. You can get the Eurostar train there. So I was a Disneyland kid, Disneyland Paris, or Euro Disney as it was called. So I did a lot of, Pirates of the Caribbean and Small World when I was young and impressionable. I think it did leave an impression on me. And the resounding feeling I always had about those rides was, this is amazing, but I want to get off the boat and look behind the animatronics. And I want to walk through that door I can see at the back that says staff only and see what's back there. I want to come here at night and look around by myself. And that was like a really strong feeling I always had. um, like, imagine the pirates of Pirates of the Caribbean are always there when there's no one at the park and the lights are off. They're still there, just standing in the dark. It's just an interesting thought that I always had. So yeah, I was super interested in like the backside of a theme park, the staff hallways and seeing something from the back where you're not supposed to, and all these locked doors and stuff. So I just wanted to make my own theme park to explore. I did grow up near an abandoned theme park called Dreamland in Margate, which is now open again. I think Limp Bizkit played there the other day, which is amazing. But yeah, so that was all boarded up. So I was aware of the concept of an abandoned theme park, but I was quite young. I wouldn't have imagined breaking in or anything. But I have watched quite a lot of urban exploring on YouTube, and the mecca of urban exploring, the Holy Grail, for a while in Japan, the Nara Dreamland theme park in Nara, Japan, which was a Disneyland, except they didn't get the license, so it's Uncanny Valley. We have Disneyland at home, Disneyland, where nothing is quite right. And then after a while, it shut down and became, the Holy Grail for urban exploring because it was all these weird, decaying animatronics in the forest. And I just thought it was the most exciting thing to see, like walking around with a flashlight, looking at like moldy old animatronics that are like breaking away. I got really into submechanophobia, which is very specifically, well, it's the fear of underwater machines, but it's in the context normally of, oh, there used to be an animatronic underwater and now it's decaying because it's underwater. So there's wonderful images of like a sea dragon that has all its skin kind of melting away in the it's just this really like, oh, there's something magical about it. So I just love all that stuff. So yeah, that's why I had a theme park. And then from a video game standpoint, a horror survival standpoint, I needed something that would give me lots and lots of rooms and themed areas and, variety. So a theme park is easily one of the best ways to do that, because you suddenly have themed areas and rides and attractions and gift shops and toilets and back rooms and offices and everything. So it spits out 100 ideas, very easily. So it was a good choice for a survival horror game.
Yeah, it's become one of the most memorable places I can think of, at least in recent years of playing horror games. It has a lot of
Thanks.
personality to it. How did the idea ever cross your mind of like the kind of Five Nights at Freddy, like the animals, like the mascots themselves are coming to life, or how did you fight off that idea and stick with actual monsters?
So I've kept my distance from Five Nights at Freddy's. I've never engaged with it. I'm well aware of it, but I've never watched any videos about it. I've never played any of the games. I knew that it was about the animatronics being
Yeah.
evil. But
So you
I
knew
was
to
kind of
avoid
like,
that.
yes, I was aware that that was well trodden ground, and also it just doesn't interest me for whatever reason. I just found it, yeah, I guess it was played out. And also, I don't know. There's a scene in a Goofy movie where they go to like a animatronic diner, and there's a creepy animatronics. Anyway, I was not interested in that. It's quite funny because of the way the enemies look and the way they kind of jitter and judder around. Some people did say, "Oh, they're animatronics, they're robots, they're mascot characters." Maybe at first glance they thought that, and I was kind of like, "Oh shit, did I not make them look organic enough? Did I make a mistake here?" But yeah, I just wasn't interested in that at all.
You could have done like a gag where like a giant bear helmet is just on one of the monsters. Like it stumbled into the costume room and stumbles out with like a bear head on, but you see all his
That
fleshy skin. That could have been cool.
that sounds like something that would happen in Dead Rising.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I just avoided that entirely, and I just wanted fleshy guys instead.
What was the first monster you created?
So yeah, it was the guest. It was the human enemy. So like, I literally just started with, I'm gonna make a survival horror game, and I need an enemy that is the zombie. But I knew they weren't going to be zombies because that's boring as well. I'm actually super duper bored of zombies. I kind of hate them. Resident Evil is the exception. For some reason, it gets away with it for me. I like Resident Evil, but all the zombie movies and TV shows, I could not care less about that stuff. I just don't care. The whole idea of the zombie apocalypse and zombie survival, I have 0% interest in it. So yeah, but I did want a humanoid enemy because that's just how you have these games. You have some kind of humanoid that shambles towards you. So I started with that, and then I just gave it like a sort of basic fleshy look, and that was early on in the project. And then I started to write the story, and then I realized, oh, okay, so the story means that these guys need to be kind of randomized. So every guest that you see in the game is randomly generated to be different. Because I mean, I won't say a specific spoiler, but like the idea is that they are all malformed uniquely. And so some of them are really big, some of them are really short, some of them have their head kind of permanently tilted to the side, some of them have a really big arm or a really big hand.
So there's probably a lot of stuff that I probably didn't even notice that differentiates a lot of these guys.
Yeah, everyone will see different enemies, and you'll never see the same one twice.
I had no idea. That is really cool.
Yeah, and it's weird though because it randomly generates them every time you come back in the room. So if you come into a room and you see one, and he's really big, and you don't like the look of him, you just leave and come back, and maybe he'll be a little guy. And actually, the one effect it really has on gameplay is this random scale that they're given does affect the health that they have. And so if you want to shoot them, you should wait until they generate small, and then you shoot them, and then that takes fewer bullets.
Wow, the pro tips.
There's a pro tip,
Wow.
country. Don't waste your bullets on the big guys. Wait until they generate to be small.
That's funny.
You can kill a small guy headshot point blank with like 3 shots, basically.
Yeah, I won't ask about story spoilers then if you don't want to get into that. I respect
We can talk
that.
about it. I mean, it depends on what you think about this video. Like, if we're going to point towards it as, if you play Crow Country, go listen to this. I really don't mind.
I don't know. I guess I was just curious where the without getting into spoilers, curious where the sort of sci-fi aspect of the test subject's origin.
I think maybe we should just lean into spoilers a tiny bit, like, so we can talk about it, because I very rarely get to speak about this kind of stuff.
Let's do it. But first, I have to mention you just talked about going in and out of a room.
Yes.
And I gotta give you a special praise for removing the Harrison exploit on hard mode, because I figured out on my second run, I was like, I'm just gonna leave him there. And he stayed there the
Yeah.
entire game, and no enemy ever came back into that room. And I was like, wow, I just totally exploited this game. And then on hard mode, he was gone. I was like, man, you
Yeah.
got it. You got it.
I did a sweep of the game looking for like cheap exploits, and then I wanted to make them all harder for hard mode. Like when you can shoot the coffin clock in the crypt to skip the puzzle. I thought, okay, in hard mode it's going to take 5 shots, so that you have to spend your ammo to do it.
You can
I
shoot the
wasn't able to
coffin
find
clock.
many. Yeah, so when you go into the crypt and there's the shotgun arm pointing at you,
Yeah.
and then it's officially the compass puzzle where you turn the heads on the gravestones.
Yeah.
But if you shoot the clock on the gravestone, it shatters and the puzzle just automatically cancels, and you
Ah,
can just leave the room.
funny.
But on hard mode, it cracks and you need to shoot it 5 times, which is a little bit of an ammo sink. So it's more of a decision that you have to make, like,
Interesting.
you know. And I was looking through the game for the exploits like that I could make harder, because I was really, excuse me, I really like the idea of the player being surprised with all these little things that are harder that they wouldn't expect to, like the door at the end taking 4 times as long to shut, because it used to be able to kind of just run around, and I was like, okay, let's make it so the player keeps getting screwed over when they try and cheese the game. And one of the ways you could cheese the game was to leave Harrison standing there, so I fixed that.
Did you know
And,
that before the
Disney
game came out, that you could leave Harrison there?
yeah, I think probably I did. I just didn't think about it very much. I was like, oh, people will want to talk to Harrison. But yeah, once you know what you're doing, you can sort of obviously game the system and leave him there.
Let me ask about the different characters in this game. This is probably the only thing that I remain a little disappointed about with Crow Country, and that is the lack of endings, because you can influence how many people survive. You can get out with like 3 people or 5 people, and it's like
Yeah.
there are key characters that die, but every ending is everyone gets out and everything's okay. And
Yeah.
so why
Yeah.
was that a time limitation thing, or did you just not want different endings? Because it feels like there should be some kind of consequence.
Yeah, so it's the kind of game where there should be multiple endings, and it was just not in my scope.
Oh,
When I
and
started Crow
like
Country-
the final boss guy, he offers you something, right? And you can say no or not.
Yes.
And it doesn't.
So yeah, you can turn down the note, and it's more of a personal choice. I feel like it's like kind of an expression of how you're feeling.
Yeah.
The only thing it changes is obviously one line of dialogue after that, and then in the ending, when everybody's sitting by the car, Mara will be holding the note in her right hand or not. I mean, that
Okay.
doesn't count as an ending change, but
Right.
it is there. Yeah, no. When I started Crow Country to be like a really small, simple game that I made by myself, and so I never ever would have committed to multiple endings, because that's exponential work for everything. Like, you have to remember that all the text we have to pay to localize it. So if I add loads of dialogue, that's expensive, and so on. So I just never scoped for it. And then
Okay.
having it adapt to whether or not you bother to save Arthur or Natalie was a really late in the day thing, because I realized, Crow makes a certain number of cure vials, and it won't make sense. So I have to fix this. I have to make it so that adapts. And that was basically as far as I got. There was never a case of, imagine if you could do this and this changes it. And but I will tell you that I have a list of things on my mood board for my next project called "Things I Didn't Do in Crow Country," and one of them is multiple endings, choices / paths.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yes. So I promise I'm going to look at it for next time, because it is a great way to get people to play the game 2 or 3 times through. So I'm always happy with it.
And it's just part of survival horror's legacy.
Yeah,
All the way back to Resident Evil 1, the Silent Hill.
I
Signalis
want to do
has a lot of
stuff.
them.
I really want to tap into. So Silent Hill 2 does it, where things that you don't think are being judged are being judged. Like the most famous example for me is as the ending, which reacts to how many times you look at the knife. And the game interprets that as having suicidal thoughts, which I think is, to this day, is one of the most mind-blowing things in all of video games, because I found myself looking at that knife over and over again, and just I don't know why, I just was drawn to it. I was thinking, it's not a weapon, it's just an item, I never get to use it. I just looked at it over and over again, and then realizing that the game was kind of watching me do that and
Yeah.
had an interpretation of my behavior was incredible. And then recently I played through Chrono Trigger. I don't know if you're familiar with Chrono Trigger.
I have never passed Chrono Trigger. My ex-girlfriend was a huge Chrono Trigger fan. She got me to play it, and it's one of those games where I play it for a few hours, and I don't know, I played it for a couple days, I guess, and I got to a point, and I'm like, I get it, I like it, it's cool. You know, I'm glad I've spent this time with it, but it's, you know, I'm kind of ready to move on to something else. So I definitely know Chrono Trigger and the story impact of your decisions, and like I replayed the first hour like a couple times just to see what I could do, and so that was really interesting.
Yeah, Chrono Trigger's it's weird. It's like really, really good. Also very easy to fall off. Like a lot of people have told me, oh, that I loved it, but I never finished it. Anyway, I finished it recently and I really liked it. And yes, it has multiple endings, but it's the thing that happens quite early on that I fell in love with, which is that you go through the game just, you know, doing stuff, and then you get arrested for a crime and you get taken to a court section.
Yeah, I was on that part.
And you realize that all your little actions were being judged and watched.
Yeah, they're like, what about this guy?
And they'll be like, oh, you ate this cheese that this man wanted for his dinner. And I'm like, I thought it was loose cheese. Or like, oh, you didn't speak to this character first. You went to pick up her necklace first. That means you only wanted her money. And it was amazing because I realized that the whole game was like playing me basically, and I loved it. So I would definitely for next time I would look at stuff that the player didn't realize is being judged to affect the ending, because I think that's a really cool thing that video games can do.
I was expecting Crow Country to have some kind of reward or something for going back and checking on your friend that you left in the car.
I actually, that's one of the regrets I have with the game. So when you're making a game and you have to pay for localization, there comes a day when you're not allowed to write any more dialogue. You have to the script has to be done. You ship it off. The localization company gets to work. And there are two things I wish I'd had time to put in. One of them is more Arthur dialogue in the car, because some people go back to him multiple times expecting there to be funny, interesting interactions, and there's not very many, and I feel bad about that because it would have been a nice thing to do. And yeah, you get an achievement for talking to him, and that's it. And you can talk to him in the control room, which I like, but that just happens either way, so that's not really part of it. But yeah, no, I would have loved to put more stuff in with that, like more stuff that happens. But I just ran out of time.
Yeah, maybe he does. I gets scared because you haven't gone back and checked on him, and he gets out of the car and he gets himself killed or something like that.
Yeah, you know what? The original ending of the game, when I didn't know what I was doing, was that you fight the final boss underground, and then let's say it grabs you and pulls you up to the surface, and you're sort of in its embrace at the surface. This is a completely different story, but the same layout. And you're in its embrace in the surface, and it's about to kill you. And then Arthur shows up in the car, and he's driving it at full speed into the enemy, and he kills the final boss. And it's like a callback to him being in the car the whole time. And I just obviously didn't do that. So I think a few people were like, oh, he just doesn't do anything. He just waits in the car the whole game.
Kind of a Barry in the flamethrower moment in Plant 42.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good little callback thing. The other bit of dialogue I wish was in the game is one of the secrets is if you go back to Crow's car with a silver key, you can unlock his car and you get the running shoes, which everybody does, because I see people's screenshots and she's always wearing the running shoes. But if the note on there says, to Natalie, happy 17th, and Mara says, oh, they're my size, and it's a little hint about how old she is. There you go. That's for fun. And it's kind of supposed to be sad how, Crow bought these for his daughter, but for whatever reason just never gave them to her because he just became estranged from her or was distracted or whatever it was.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a gift for Natalie that she was supposed to get, and she never got it. But then Mara runs around the park in them, right? And I really thought, there should be a line of dialogue when later on when you meet Natalie, if you're wearing the shoes, she should say, oh, I always wanted a pair like that, but I never got them. I wish she says that.
That would have been good.
Yeah. It would have been a good line. I could put it in, but you have to pay for all the languages. Localization is the bane of my existence.
Depends on how much is worth it to you to have something, a little detail in there like that.
It's okay to have regrets at the end of a project. It keeps me motivated for next time.
You can slip it into the next game, like an Easter egg or something.
Yeah. So that's my. I could read you my list of things I didn't do in Crow Country if you like.
I think
I've got it right here.
I think people would be fascinated by that.
So just on the record, this is not just because things are on this list doesn't mean they'll be in the next game.
Yeah.
But it's things that I would like to, at the very least, have a look at and experiment with.
Okay.
Because there's, so it starts off limited inventory space / item management, including upgrading your maximum item space. So that's a given, right? Resident Evil does that. Silent Hill doesn't. Crow Country doesn't.
Right.
But it's fun and interesting because then you have more decision making the whole time, which is great.
It's a different flow. It really is.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's easy to be annoying, so I really have to be careful. But it's just interesting. It just engages the player, makes them make decisions and stuff. So yeah, I'd love to try that out. And then hand in hand with that, of course, is the item storage box or a version of that magic box. Access files / notes in inventory screen. This is just a quality of life thing that Crow Country doesn't have.
I have a question about that. How did I thought maybe that was a decision that you only wanted that stuff in the save room because you're talking about decision making, and I mean it is a decision to backtrack, to go to the to get through those enemies that maybe you left alive just so that you can read that note and refresh yourself on a puzzle solution. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm sure it pisses people off, but so do limited inventory spaces.
So originally I had nothing. I had no way to reread files. You just have to go back to the file and read it, which does suck. And one of my testers said, I couldn't remember. I knew I'd read a file, but I couldn't remember where it was. And so I spent ages wandering around trying to find it. And I was like, this is dreadful. This is awful. I have to do something about this. And so my solution was, okay, I'll just put a reference for them in the save room so that when you're in the save room, you can check it. And I think the example in question was maybe like wanting to read the file referencing the shark dolphin, which is in a save room. So when you're doing that puzzle, you have that file.
Yeah.
And then I just liked the idea of it being, I was looking for things to put in the save rooms because the save rooms in Crow Country is just a save point. You don't have a magic item box. You don't have a shop or an upgrade system. There's not much there. So having the notebooks to flick through is like just an extra thing that makes those rooms valuable. I did originally look at putting the files in the inventory screen, and I just didn't have room to do a really meaningful menu layout, and I just couldn't do it. But I have already prototyped this for my next game. It's in, it works, so that's going in.
Of viewing your notes at any time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because why not? Most games allow you to do that.
I thought it worked out just fine the way that you handled it. I thought it was kind of.
I liked it
unique.
too, but I'm not necessarily looking to replicate every single one of Crow Country's little victories because I think that would be, redundant. So the next one, and this is a big one, verticality in the level design: stairs, ramps, ladders, etc. So there's nothing.
The stage in the theater, right?
That's the one. Well done. That's the only example. Every other bit of verticality is fake. Whenever you go on an elevator anywhere else, the room actually moves around you and you stay still. The only room in the whole game with real verticality is the theater, and even then it's like awkward. And so I really want a game with stairs and ramps and stuff because then you can make much more interesting spaces and puzzles and possibly even combat. Although making the enemies walk up the stairs is difficult as well because then you've got pathfinding problems. But again, I've already prototyped this. I'm super into this as an idea because it would allow me to make spaces that feel different from the Crow Country ones, which is something I want to do. So yes, this is happening. And then some basic stuff, pushing / pulling blocks. It's the most basic thing in video games. Crow Country doesn't have it, but I'm sure there's some fun puzzles I could do. So I'll have a go at that.
You have a good eye for puzzle. You have a good eye for puzzles, man.
Thank you.
There's good variety to them.
The one through line in my career would be puzzle design, because if you look at the last sort of 3 games, Tangle Tower, Snipperclips, and Crow Country, they're all puzzle games. So
awesome.
That's the thing I've spent the most time in my career getting the hang of. So thanks. Crow Country is a puzzle game first.
Crucial element of these survival horror games, in my opinion.
where whenever I play a modern horror game and I can tell there's not really going to be any puzzles, I immediately kind of check out. I'm like, oh, I don't care anymore. Get me out of this. Whenever I play one of the ones that I disparagingly call a flickering hallway simulator, I'm always like, there's not going to be any puzzles in this. I'm going to be bored. So turn this off. Money system with the shop/upgrade menu. And so one of the problems in Crow Country is after a while, there's nothing interesting to pick up, especially on exploration mode, because you don't need ammo or health. And so a game where you're picking up some kind of money or treasure or something, or even just like upgrade items, just more interactable stuff. And then you've got choices of how to spend those resources, like, oh, do I upgrade my gun? Do I make more ammo? Whatever it is, it's player agency. So I'm interested in that.
What about a item combination system? Item inspection system?
Yes, I've done combination. I'm prototyping that already, where you can combine healing items to make different ones. And like the genius of Resident Evil herbs is the whole, do I eat a green herb or do I wait to make a green and red? Like so simple, but it's so powerful.
And the ability to, one thing that they just don't do in most of the Resident Evils, and I don't know why, is that you look at an item in 3D and rotate it around, you see that it has like a switch on it. And like they don't do that in enough of them.
The next Detective Grimoire game that I'm making, this is a sequel to Tangled Tower, is called The Mermaid Mask, and it is nothing but spinning 3D objects and looking for secret switches and stuff. So
okay.
I've had my fill of that, but I definitely would love to do that in the horror game setting as well, because that's a classic thing to do. There's so many items you pick up in Resident Evil where you're like, oh, what's this? And then you interact with it, and it's just a different item that was in a box. And then they get rid of the box. And it's like, I always say to myself, like, that was ultimately pointless, but I guess I was engaged for 1 minute whilst I did that. So, melee weapons. Ugh. Sorry, I didn't put any in Crow Country. People were mad that you have to shoot the boxes, but I always say it's a choice.
I'm for that. Keep those melee weapons out, man, because they screw up your resource system if they're good enough. You have to
be really careful. Yeah, you do have to be careful. They have to be bad, or they have to break, or whatever it is. Otherwise, yes, you never need your ammo, right? So that would ruin the game. I am aware.
Shooting the boxes, it was always a decision that I made, and I love it. And it's a risk, right? Because maybe you don't get anything.
No, it works. And like the glass bottles, you can peer into them. And every time I see that it's just an antidote, I'm like, okay, I'm not spending my bullet on that. I don't want that. So it's like a good little moment. Yeah, no, it works well. So yeah, like melee weapons are on this list, but you're right. There's massive downsides to it. So it's definitely a consideration. I've got here guns with multiple ammo types and ammo types with multiple guns. And underneath it just says more player agency and combat options.
Okay.
So yeah, Crow Country is just you shoot the handgun, or you shoot the shotgun, or you throw a grenade. That really is it. There's just not that much choice.
Okay.
And so I'd like a game with a little bit more thought of like, oh, if I do this or that, it will help, or I need to keep this ammo, or I need to use it on this enemy type, or whatever it is. So, accurate map that shows you and the direction you're facing. So I'm sure everyone would have preferred that, because that's helpful and useful.
That's always good.
The reason Crow Country doesn't do that is because the map is a lie. It does not match the shape of the rooms half the time. And if the map doesn't match the shape of the rooms, then you can't put a little pointer showing where the character is, because where would it be?
Yeah.
And so I just had to get rid of that. But yeah, next time I'll make the map accurate. I already prototyped it. It works, so that'll be on there. Stalker/pursuer enemy. I mean, that's a big one I haven't tried yet. Like a nemesis or
you kind of came close. I mean, you've got that really, really big guy that appears.
Yeah, but they don't follow you around the map. They don't come through doors or anything. I'd like to experiment with that kind of thing, just because it can make a game interesting. Like I really like Haunting Ground and Clock Tower and stuff, and those are entirely stalker and pursuer enemies. So it's an interesting thing to try. Some enemies that require strategy / weak points, weaknesses, etc. Aside from headshots, I didn't really have anything, so I want to experiment with that a little bit. Player story, multiple endings. I've already said, and there's 2 at the bottom here that are question marks: actual cutscenes and voice acting. So yeah, there's the list. Not sure about those. That's expensive, but you know.
I notice a very big omission:
Oh, really? Please tell me.
limited saves.
Oh, that is there. I somehow skipped it. I don't know how I did that. It is on the list. It's right underneath limited inventory space. I guess I
Okay.
bundled them together. No, you're right. I would definitely do that. But I think these days you have to make it disabled on the easier
Oh
modes,
yeah,
right?
sure. Like I'm all for keeping the genre inviting to modern players. Like
Yeah,
the Resident Evil 2 remake standard is checkpoints and hardcore is ink ribbons. I'm
there you
cool.
go.
I'm cool
Yep.
with that. That's
No,
great to
I'm all
me.
for that. I do love the idea of like having to save and feeling like you've committed to a save and not spamming it and it gives you something to collect that's valuable. Like every time you collect ink ribbons in Resident Evil, it feels like a relief, you know.
Yeah,
So
you're
yeah,
like, oh,
definitely,
I'm okay
definitely
for
for
the
that.
next 20 minutes because I can save three
Yeah, yeah.
times.
And then eventually I end up with like 15 ink ribbons because I'm quite careful. And
You,
anyway,
you know what? That's a great point because I talk about this a lot with when it comes to survival horror. That the resource balance is the hardest thing to get right because it
yeah,
changes depending on the player, and
yeah, yeah,
like you want to reward a smart player who's
yep,
exploring. You want them to be able to find that stuff because that gets them to explore, and exploring is fun.
yeah,
But that also makes the game easier for them if the exploration itself is not really challenging and they're like losing
yeah.
resources in the exploration itself. And so it it's really hard to judge a survival horror game. You're like, oh well, I finished the game with too much ammo, too much health. Well, but I also explored every single little
Yes,
corner,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I tried my hardest to get around enemies whenever I could,
yep.
and I took a lot of damage. So I have no health items, but I have a lot of ammo. So like, it's really hard to judge that balance. And I don't know if any survival horror game actually does it perfectly. If you go back and play those first Resident Evil games, it's absurd how much shotgun ammo there is just lying
Sure, yeah.
around. But we
Yeah,
weren't used to it at the time, and we were
right.
all playing terribly.
I think about it like this, where if you are being thorough and careful and exploring everywhere and picking everything up and hoarding your resources, you basically replace one pleasurable experience with a different one. So at its default, the game is pleasurable because you're stressing about running out of ammo, and that's exciting. And but if you're hoarding and you're careful and you're thorough, that goes away and it's replaced with the satisfaction of being well prepared. And they both work. They both make me happy, you know. And maybe I'll go back and forth between those two states a couple of times. Maybe that would be ideal. But it's super interesting. When I played Dino Crisis 1, I was hoarding all my ammo for a big final boss that just never happened. And so I ended the game with so much stuff that I'd hoarded, like all the best weapons and ammo, and it was disappointing.
It's
Um,
it's almost
yeah,
it, like there's a perspective that you can look at it through where if the game is actually not balanced well and it's giving you too many resources, but the game also makes you feel like you should be holding this stuff,
mm,
like the game has kind of done its job, hasn't it? Even if it is badly balanced, if you're holding on to everything because you're scared that you might need this, even if you don't actually end up needing it, you felt like you needed to. And so the game was kind of successful even though it screwed up.
yeah, it's just about that feeling. As long
Yeah.
as you feel bad every time you shoot a bullet, then the game is working.
You're like I'm worried that I might be screwing myself for something 2 hours from now. So I'm
Yeah,
not going to do it. And so if the game can make you feel like that, that's at least something.
isn't that funny how survival horror is a genre about trying to make you feel anxious and like regretful, like, and that's what they want to do.
Yes.
It's just fascinating to me because it's like this isn't how we normally talk about art and experiences and these things. You know, it's so unique. That's
Well,
why I like it.
that feeling of, you're low on health and you walk into a room and there's, four monsters in there and you're like, you know what? I only have this one stun grenade on me and four shotgun rounds. Like, I really don't want to use this stuff right now. But if I die here, I'm going back 20 minutes. That
Yeah,
that feeling right there is so important in the genre because that influences what you do. If there's a checkpoint from 2 minutes ago, then you'll be like, okay, I'm going to try to get back past him and see if I can. But that's not how you feel if you're going to lose 20 or 30 minutes. You're like, God, I really need to try to get around these guys, but I really don't want to go back. So screw it. I'm gonna use the resources just to make sure I can get to that next save point. It's an addictive feeling, and it's one that not everyone appreciates. Some people would call that bad design, right? That it makes you not want to play. It's like no, that is playing. That's what this is about.
Yeah, a lot of games just have constant auto checkpoints. I mean, you've got things like Souls games and stuff which kind of have their own system and do play with planning and making mistakes and stuff. When I really enjoyed playing Last of Us 2, but that game has an outrageous checkpoint system where more than once I died on a section and then I respawned slightly in front of the place where I died and I'd been skipped over something. Like I'd hit a checkpoint and then ultimately I was brushed past the bit that I found difficult, and I just found that abhorrent. Like I thought that was appalling. So aside from that, I like the game, but yeah, checkpoints can be dangerous. So yeah.
Before we get into the spoiler thing, I'm gonna save that for the end.
Sure.
I gotta ask, why can't you shoot any of the characters?
Oh, good question. Yeah, so that's a
I tried at the
issue
end
with these kinds of games. Like I always try to rack my brains to think, what do other people do? What do other developers do to get around this problem? They're like, I think in Metal Gear Solid, for instance, you just can't pull the trigger when you aim at a friendly NPC.
But then you can kill Maria, right? In Silent Hill 2.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you name some games where you can just kill your friends and it's like a game over? I guess there are.
Well, that's a game over, but then like in Resident Evil 4, you can kill the merchant, but the game keeps going, but he's dead.
Is that true?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can shoot him and he's gone. Like no more upgrades for you.
So wow. I mean, I guess you wouldn't really save it after that unless you were an idiot.
Right. That's amazing. Exactly. But like there's it's
in Elden Ring, for instance. Elden Ring has a lot of NPCs in it, and every single one of them can fight and has stats and weapons and attacks, even if they're just a merchant or whatever they are. And if you attack someone enough, they'll fight back and you can fight them and you could kill them. And then all of their quests and all the quests that require them will just be shut off forever and gone. And that game, that might even be auto-saved immediately, so you do have to be careful.
Ooh. Well,
you can make mistakes and stuff.
What about Prey from 2017?
Never played that one.
Oh yeah, you can shoot anyone you come across in that game. You meet the head of security, you shoot her. You spend the whole game trying to at the end you reunite with your brother who like runs the facility, and you can just murder him right away.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting, though. So, to answer your question, the reason I never put that in Crow Country, I mean, it's a bit of work that I just didn't want to do. But also, I couldn't stop thinking, well, if you can shoot the NPCs and kill them, and that's bad. What if you accidentally do it from too far away, And you didn't even mean to do it, and it would I'd have to put like some sort of distance threshold on it, and I just never bothered to go down that road.
That's fair enough.
Maybe next time.
That's fair enough. It's not like a criticism or anything. It's just kind of a
curiosity.
It's
a really interesting question because it did come up. I basically just didn't solve it at all. I just had nothing happen at all,
There's this moment in Prey. I guess you haven't played Prey, but you come across a robot that is made with like a copy of your personality. So it's like you're talking to yourself. Your past self left you this robot to talk to you, and because you've lost your memory, right? So you're talking to a version of yourself basically through this robot, and its name's January, and and January will talk to you over your radio and kind of tell you about missions and story stuff and whatever. But once you start going to a certain part of the ship, you start getting a message from a robot named December with your same voice. It's another robot that was left for you from another past version of you, I guess. I'm not entirely sure. And it's like, don't believe what January says. And you're getting all these messages like, whoa, what's going on? Okay. And then The moment that you actually meet up with December, the robot, they're like these little flying drones, basically. The moment you come up with against December, it dies, and so you don't really get to follow what December was trying to tell you.
Right.
However, on replay, when you walk into that room, if you know what's going to happen, you can save December, and
Wow.
and then you can choose to follow what December's telling you, and it leads you to a different ending of the game, where it's basically like you can basically quit the game. He tells you like, this is how we leave the spaceship. Let's get the fuck out of here. And you basically
is it one of those? Is it like an optional ending that's like much earlier?
yeah. The game can be done within a couple hours because you follow December and he gives you an escape plan of how to abandon the entire thing.
That's fascinating.
It's genius.
Okay, so my reference point for one of those types of endings is Haunting Ground, but I think it's New Game Plus only, where you can just get a key and go out the back door and she just leaves.
Yeah.
And it's kind of almost like a joke where it's like, yeah, what if you just found your way out and just left? But yeah, pretty sure it's locked behind New Game Plus, so it's not something you do by accident. So here's 2 secrets about Crow Country in regard to this. There used to be one of those endings. You used to be able to go back to Arthur in the car and he would beg you to leave. And he'd say, please, let's just go. I don't care what you're doing. I really want to go. And you'd have the option to turn him down or not. And you'd be able to say, yeah, okay. And then you could just go and there'd be credits roll, I guess. And she drives away with him and that's the end. And it felt like an interesting thing to put in the, just the idea that that's an option for Mara, even though it's probably not a good idea given the situation. But it was in there. But then I just felt like, too many people are going to find this and the game's going to end and they're going to they'll feel weird about it and they won't know what to do. So I took it out. And then there used to be a dog ending as well. And by a dog ending, I mean like the Silent Hill 2, it was you the whole time dog ending. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
So when the big animatronic crow that you activate towards the end of the game walks down the path, he goes down his little rail track and he stops at the main entrance and apparently leads out to the parking lot. And you can go look at him, and Mara says, "Oh, he's trying to leave. I don't blame him. It'd be nice just to walk away." It used to be, if you had all 15 secrets, there was an option to climb on his back like a piggyback and ride him away into the wilderness over the horizon, and you got silly music and credits. And it was an optional like dog ending, and I just didn't have time to finish it, so I took it out. It was almost in there. Never mind. Yeah.
For the next one.
Yeah, optional endings. And some of them are shorter or bad. Like Haunting Ground is one of my favorite games because it's got endings where horrible things happen and it definitely wasn't what you wanted, but it's just good that can happen sometimes. So yeah, fun stuff.
So you want to move on to the spoiler talk?
Sure, why not?
All right. So spoilers. I'm gonna completely butcher this. What's the spoilers for the end of the game?
Well, there's two twists. One is the one that people guess somewhere along the way, which is that Mara is Elaine.
Yes.
Who's the girl? She's only 17 and she was injured 2 years ago when she was 15, and she's been in hospital since she came back. And she has an incurable infection that's about to kill her, and she just wants to tell Crow that. And so that's twist number one. And that's been a fun time to watch people work that out, either really early on or somewhere in the middle, or plenty of people I've seen only get it when they're told it. So the spectrum on that is
really
fascinatingly wide. Yes. Which I think have basically balanced it correctly, where most people are somewhere in between those two. Someone told me they got it from the trailer because I show the phone call where Crow says you came back, and they were like, okay, I got it. And it's like, wow, okay, you're being very vigilant. And then some people are playing the game just do, and then Crow says hello Elaine, and they go, what? What? And it's like, that's fascinating to me that people are different in that way. And the second twist of the game is that the guests are coming from the year 2106 to warn about the future being uninhabitable, and they are being mutated because their teleportation time machine is broken. And so basically Crow Country is one big Star Trek transporter accident. which is a sort of genre of sci-fi things that you can. It's a convenient way to create a monster, really. And like you think about like The Fly or something like that, where if you have a machine that moves around matter, if it's broken, you get a lumpy, horrible flesh, please kill me now, monster that comes out the other side. So that's where the monsters come from.
That was a really cool way to have your monsters, for sure, and for it to become a story thing to where the guy wants to go through himself.
Yeah, so he goes through, and this is if we want to talk about spoilers, we can talk about like my personal interpretations of this.
Okay, go for it.
So as someone that's played the game, do you have an interpretation of what it is that's happened in 2106, just out of interest?
I don't. I also haven't thought about it since I played it back in May. I haven't.
Fair enough.
So like, I liked it. I liked the story. I read all the notes. But no, I didn't think too much about what the event would have been.
So plenty of people, most people don't clock it. Some people have. On Reddit, on Steam, there are some threads about this, and some people have clocked it. But I deliberately put it beneath the surface. I kind of wanted it to be something that you realize 2 weeks later while you're washing up. You go, oh, it's about this, or this was really what was going on. So a lot of people get it wrong and they think it's a viral outbreak because they talk about bacterial infection. But no, there's no bacterial infection in the future. The bacteria is literally just normal bacteria that becomes warped by the machine, by the time machine. In the same way that a human body gets malformed, normal bacteria gets malformed and becomes very, very dangerous. So that's all that is. The actual event of 2106 is nothing more or less than the climate apocalypse, which is all it is.
Okay.
Which has already been set into motion. And there's a few hints in the game. Early on, she's asked by the fairy, do you pledge to protect our precious natural world? And the most egregious one, if you go back to the haunted manor, later on, someone has set the globe on fire, and Mara says, "The globe is on fire. I don't understand. Has somebody done this?" So there's little hints here and there. Or even before that, if you go and look at the globe before it's on fire, she says, it's very fragile. So there's little hints here and there. But basically, here's what it is. Okay, the first guest in the story shows up on the 21st of March, 1988. And that is the day I was born in real life. And so that's why the game is set in 1990, because it's 2 years since that first event. And I placed it there because the whole story is a kind of waxing on the concept of being born just in time to be completely fucked by this, irreversible state of things. So I feel like I was born just into the era of climate change. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get you, man.
So that's what that is. It's they came back at the last chance that they could have saved it, and capitalism ruined that, and now there's nothing that can be done. That's what Crow Country is behind the surface. So yeah, it's climate change, it's capitalism, it's the capitalistic greed of just doing what you've been doing your whole life just to get rich and not really worrying that much about how much.
Right. Well, that's Crow. Right. Yeah, and the mines.
His father does it. He doesn't even really want the money. He just does it because he does it. He feels bad about it eventually, but he still did it. His whole life, he took all the gold and destroyed it, even when he kind of knew.
And the gold was related to what again? How, was it related to the portal?
So the gold is inside. It's just inside the roots. So the roots are calibration antenna for the time machine.
Right. Okay.
And so he just cut them open and took the gold out, but that was, destroying the mechanism for the time machine. It's just convenient that they have gold in them, although gold does have some properties, some magical properties, and some kind of interesting sciencey properties that maybe you might find it in a time machine. Obviously, there's no comparison I can make to a real time machine, but I thought there's something kind of mystical about gold. So maybe it's the secret to a functioning time portal is gold wiring. I don't know.
So we've got climate change, disasters, and greedy capitalist business owners screwing everything up. So are you planning an update to the game to change the game's name to Woke Country?
Yes, I am. That's a great.
Because talking about climate change makes you woke, right?
Sure, fine. I'll take that. I'll take that hat if I need to wear it. That's fine with me.
But it was really that really fascinating to hear you break that down. And I think a lot of people are going to be interested to hear those little details.
Yes, I think the bit that the piece that nobody would know is the relevance to my personal birthday,
Yeah.
because it's just like the idea is, that's the turning point, and I showed up just in time to be on the backside of it, and all my generation did, and the idea of the previous generation has kind of screwed everything. Anyway, have fun.
Yeah.
That's
Go buy yourself a house.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
work in the gig
Good luck.
economy and breathe this wonderful air.
Yeah. Well, I like to think that the people that come through the pool are scientists, probably.
Okay.
On some kind of mission, and you just murder them all one by one, which is kind of mean. But yeah, I was going to have some of them in like futuristic lab coats, but I couldn't decide on how to design it, so I just didn't.
That would have been cool. Even just a regular. Hey, lab coats don't have to be futuristic. They're lab coats.
Right. They're not going to change in that many years. Some of them have underwear on, and some of them have like little vests on, and that's fine. But originally I had plans for more stuff that came through, like stuff from the future. Like you might ask yourself, okay, if they were coming back to help us fix climate change before it happens, what was their plan? What were they going to do? And so one thread of the story that I never, examined was, are they bringing back some technology for us to use or something? And maybe that survives the pool transition, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe that gets warped. I just had too many ideas, and I just had to stop adding stuff to the game eventually.
Sure.
And then I kind of decided that the idea that the climate change angle is hidden and most people might miss it, I actually liked that, and I was happier with that, because then it's not preachy, right? It's hidden in the background, and people like wondering about what the story really means. So I made Crow Country for people to speculate on Reddit about this story and the ending, and that's what's happened, and that's worked just fine. So
I assume plenty of people work it out through the hints.
Yes, yeah, plenty of people have worked it out. Plenty of people make incorrect assumptions. Like I said, a lot of people think it's a virus, or people have written. There's some videos about how it's actually a By Your Bootstraps time loop where Crow causes it in the first place, and it's fascinating to hear all the theories. And art is in the eye of the beholder, and you can interpret it however you like. But it's been really interesting. But what I was going to say is, so Crow gives you the note that explains the situation, just about, where the first guy could just about talk, and he says, we've come from the future because it's uninhabitable. And then he goes into the pool, and there used to be a version of the ending that was more explicit, where he explains the context of this a bit more, but I took it out and made it vague. But in my mind, he goes through the pool to have a look at 2106, right? Possibly just before he mutates and dies. And he's done that after giving you the note. So he basically gives you the note and then says, right, let's go see if you've managed to fix this, because now the future might be different. So when he comes back and he's mutated and he tries to say something, he might have had good news for you.
Yeah.
But Mara doesn't want to hear it either way. So she kills him.
Well, I mean, he's a giant monster, right?
Sorry?
He's a giant monster at that point. So
yeah, I mean, he's weirdly able to like put a couple of words together just because that was a creepy moment.
Yeah, like I don't feel like I'm gonna kill you now, motherfucker. It's just kind of like, my god, like he's a monster now. Like this sucks for him.
he knows what it is. He's seen the other side, at least briefly. So that's an interesting idea. The idea that this guy knows now, and he's come back, and he's not really able to communicate it, but he knows whether or not we solve climate change.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me. Anyway,
I continue to be fascinated by the idea of futuristic lab coats. So anybody listening to this interview, anyone listening to this if you're on Twitter, tag Adam and tag me with your personal illustration of a futuristic lab coat. I have to see it, please.
Okay. I want to see that too.
I was also curious. Your design of Mara, accidentally or intentionally resembling the Sphere Hunter.
Definitely accidental, but it is uncanny.
Yeah, just totally Susie.
Yeah, but it's completely. I promise, I never once thought about that. I was aware of her and her videos, but never crossed my mind. But no, it's right there. Like, they do look similar.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't a decision at all.
Okay. Cool.
Like, she just kind of has that face because I was like, I didn't know what I was doing, and that haircut. Is the easiest haircut to model because it's just like half of a capsule with the front bit chopped off. Like there's no, and you don't have to animate it like flopping around. It's the easiest hair to model, so that's why she has the haircut.
It looks good.
Yeah, it works. The only thing is that you can't see when she shakes her head because her ears don't pop out. So she has to shake her head a lot. Otherwise, you don't see any movement because she doesn't have any texture on it. Anyway, that's getting into the unnecessary detail.
Should have put a baseball cap on her.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
We're about at the hour and a half point now. So I don't really have anything else to bring up unless there's anything else you want to mention before we wrap this up.
No, we talked about Crow Country extensively, which is super fun. I like talking about spoilers as well because I don't get to do that very often.
I think before we started, you mentioned that you'd like to talk a little bit about survival horror games that you've been playing.
I don't know if I'm playing any survival horror games right now. I'm just playing a lot of other stuff. I've been playing PS1 stuff in general, like a lot of JRPGs. I really want to make you're not supposed to say JRPG anymore. Maybe it's like
everyone already forgot about that.
Okay, so I want to make a JRPG one day because it's my other favorite genre. So I've been playing a lot of stuff like that, Wild Arms and Chrono Trigger and Breath of Fire and all that. Basically, all the ones that aren't Final Fantasy VII. Just discovering how much great stuff there is. So that's been something I've been doing. I'm a big PS1 collector. I have everything. I collect a lot of PS1 games. I started the other day a survival horror game called Countdown Vampires. Are you familiar with this one?
No, I don't know this one.
Oh my god! So it wasn't released in the UK, so it doesn't have a PAL. But I have a US PlayStation, and I have a US copy of it. I actually bought it in LA, and it is you play as this like ripped, shirtless guy who's supposedly a security guard, and he's running around this futuristic nightclub that's like horror themed, but also like sexy Alice in Wonderland themed. And there's like different rooms that are named after the stripper ladies, which is quite a fun setting. Anyway, it's basically a vampire outbreak at a nightclub, and you have to rescue the people and put holy water on them to turn them back into humans. And it's very Resident Evil. The tank controls, the fixed camera, the items, the occasional little boss fights, and it's just not a game I think anyone really knows about. But I started playing it and I was like, oh, it's like Resident Evil, and it's even got hilarious, terrible voice acting, which is so great. So if anyone's looking for, some like really clunky, amusingly bad Resi 1 style stuff, go check out Countdown Vampires.
Countdown Vampires, you heard it here, guys.
Yeah. So that's when I played this.
Well, that's cool. I don't know if you've played Amnesia: The Bunker, but you should if you're into survival horror and you haven't played anything new.
I tried Amnesia once and I didn't get on with it, so I fell off of it. And then I kind of like grumpily associate it with the change into first-person horror that I don't like.
Okay.
And so I kind of sulked about Amnesia because I know one is good and one is bad, but to me, Amnesia and Slenderman were like a 1-2 punch. And then suddenly all horror was first person, and I was sad about that.
Well,
I should play Amnesia.
I don't know how much you know about The Bunker, which is the one that came out last year, but they had
so that's a new one.
They had a change in creative director who went for a gameplay centric experience instead, where it's one of the I put it in the top tier of survival horror games that I've ever played in my life. It is
I'm looking it up now. And it's
fantastic.
pretty cool.
Fantastic. Limited. You got limited inventory space. Immersive sim elements of like trying to find your way into a room by different ways. You have a stalker monster. You have traps that you can avoid or use against him. You have to maintain a generator with gas while you're exploring the bunker, and then the lights go out and the monster comes out of the wall because you took too long.
I just saw a screenshot of the map and I'm sold already.
Classic survival horror map exploration. You've got one save room at the center, so you have to go through an entire part of the bunker and complete your mission and make it back. And if the monster kills you, you just lost all of it. That's
a great recommendation, because I would
good.
have ignored this one, because I'm really like, with the exception of Resi 7 and Village and stuff, I tend to ignore the first person ones just by default, which I know is a bad habit, but this one looks great.
The bunker is a must play, and it's not too long either. You can probably pass it in 5 or 6 hours.
That's good.
And this first-person survival horror, Cry of Fear. Do you have any experience with Cry of Fear?
No.
I'm going to send you my video on Cry of Fear. I did one a few years ago, and it's a Half-Life mod that got turned into its own horror game, and it is, I think it's the closest any game has ever come to replicating the feel of Silent Hill, and it's in first person.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is lonely, it is creepy, very scary, terrifying sound design, very similar music to Silent Hill, kind of a similar style. Okay. Dark story. It's kind of janky, but it's an absolute must play if you're into these kinds of games.
Cool. I'll check it out.
All right. Well, all right. We're going to wrap it up here. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I haven't done one of these interviews in a while. So, Adam, good luck with your future projects.
Thank you.
Or, I mean, you're going to have a lot of people ready. As long as you put, from the studio who made Crow Country, you're going to have a line of people ready for it. So, yeah. Thank you for coming on, and I'm sure everyone enjoyed.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been really great to talk to you. This has been one of my favorite interviews for sure. One of the most insightful into the process for sure.
Oh, great. I'm glad.
Okay, everyone. Thank you for listening, and stick around. I'll talk to somebody else cool soon, hopefully. Bye.
I mentioned on Twitter that I'm on your side with Arkham Knight. So I don't know if you want to bring that up. But,
That's staying in right there. Okay.